Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Kubrick's Universe.
So many answers we may never know. Too many questions, get on with the show. No time for the chorus, only this verse. It's Kubrick's Universe. All right. It's Kubrick's Universe.
Open the podcast doors, Hal.
It's Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick podcast.
I need to get my hair cut. You can. Why? You're on lockdown. Shit. I want to see my friends. You can. Why? You're on lockdown. But God damn it. I want to go to church. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Well, you can. You're on lockdown. Shove it up your ass. I want to go to the pub. You can. Why? You're on lockdown. Man, it sucks. Get it through your thick head. You're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. Get it through your thick head. You're on lockdown. Ain't nobody going no place. Get it into your mind. You're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. Get it through your thick head.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Kubrick's Universe. The song you're hearing is called Lockdown, and it was written and recorded by Barney Williams and his family. Barney is a dear friend of our show's producer, Stephen Rigg. Barney produced this wonderfully catchy tune to help cope with what life has become like for us presently. It is now May 2020, and with the COVID-19 pandemic dominating nearly every hour of human life on planet Earth, these are, to say the least, very challenging times. With our current situation upon us for the foreseeable future, we're proud to try bringing a glimmer of light to things, because shortly after the coronavirus outbreak, we had the pleasure of chatting with an actor who needs no introduction, a humanitarian of extraordinary empathy and compassion, and, simply put, a wonderful guy, Keir Dullea. In this episode, we're going to bring you the first installment of our talk with him. I've met and spoken with him a few times, and I mean it. You won't find a more gracious, intelligent, or thoughtful man than Kier. He not only has perspective and wisdom, he has kindness in his core. He was kind enough to spend some time with us all while we navigate the reality of our lives now, and we really hope you enjoy this time we all get to spend alone, but together, with Keir Dullea. So, open your pod bay doors and join us for a little while as we get to ask Kier about his early career and the opportunities that led to him working with Stanley Kubrick.
You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown. You wanna go for a ride, you wanna play a little 5-on-5, but you can't, you're on lockdown.
All right, so, Kier, what was it, 9, almost 10 years ago, Stephen founded a group on Facebook called the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, and it became one of the most successful, if not the most, and he started that, and I guess, what year was it, Stephen, 2011?
Correct.
2011,
Yes.
So going, yeah. And then after we'd become friends, Stephen and I, we had this idea to do the world's first continuously running podcast for all things Stanley. There had been some podcasts out there that were one-offs or 6-part series, if you will, that kind of thing. And we just thought, gosh, there's such a treasure trove, and, why not do something that we could, enjoy doing in perpetuity? And that began about 2.5 years ago at this point, and it's just been a blast. So,
oh, that's great. Well, I support you. It's he's right up there with Orson Welles. I mean, he's one of the great directors of all time.
Indeed. Since you brought up Orson, I'm just going to ask as a sidebar, do you have a favorite Orson Welles film?
Oh, gosh. Well, Citizen Kane is obvious one, though, but there have been other films. I just can't think one of offhand, but,
okay.
He was certainly, what I in interviews, I'm often asked about, did I have a sense when I made the film that it was going to, get on the American Film Institute's top 100 films of all time? And, the answer usually that I give is that not really, because if you had interviewed the cast members of Citizen Kane at the time, how could they possibly imagine that 75 years later they'd be studied in film schools?
Right. It's a good point.
So that's really, my answer is similar. I realized that I was a part of a wonderful film and that was going to get a lot of attention, but I had no idea that it was going to be, that we'd be more than 50 years later having a conversation like this.
Yeah. Many, many conversations. I mean, since the invention of the internet and then social media, more than ever, that film is alive, breathing, and doing very, very well in the popular consciousness. Kier, so I'm calling you from North New Jersey, and we're going to talk about that later because of our connection here, which I only learned of last week when we spoke. And you're in Connecticut, hopefully sheltering in place. And I just want to ask how you and your wife and your loved ones are doing in this situation.
Well, we're doing okay. We are completely isolated, but I'm not finding it that difficult. We have lots of books to read, and we watch a lot of video stuff, and we're well stocked up with food. My wife tends to do a little. She's younger than I am, so she's probably going to brave this epidemic better than I. So she's doing a little shopping, but she's inviting necessary to go shopping more than once about every 10 days. And we've got about 75 cans of sardines if worst came to worst. Anyway, we're doing okay. Thank you.
That's so good to hear. And you mentioned that you do get in a morning walk or a bicycle ride.
Yeah, we live next to a cemetery. When I say next to, I mean literally. Our property line borders the cemetery, so it's about 35 strides, and we're through the gate, the cemetery gate, and we're not getting there isn't a lot of traffic of people walking much. There's some, but nothing like you'd find in public streets and people trying to get exercise. So if I bicycle around there's an outside loop within the cemetery that if I go once around, it's about 1.1 miles. So I usually try to do about 10 miles. It takes me, I go around about 9 times.
9 times.
And that's equivalent to about 10 miles. So I try to do that every day if the weather is good, or we walk it.
That's great. I mean, I'm so glad you're keeping active and, physical, as we're into this now for over a month of the real hardships that are hitting everyone. Yeah. They're really getting the word out now for everyone to try and get some exercise, even though, of course, we're all supposed to shelter in place and stay at home as much as possible. So I just had a side question, since you mentioned you've been able to keep up with reading books. Is there anything you're reading right now that you never had and have finally got the chance to catch up with?
Well, there's an Irish author by the name of Trevor. This 85-year-old mind can't. William Trevor, I think. Anyway, he's an extraordinary novelist that I read a lot of. I happen to have a lot of books by him that I hadn't gotten to read yet, so I've been reading his work. He's a brilliant Irish novelist, I think, and William Trevor. Yeah.
There you have Keir Dullea's Book of the Month selection for you, if you would.
Well, any of his books. He's just quite big. He's been nominated for a lot of awards, and he's brilliant. Yeah.
So for everyone listening, if you're at home and doing the self-quarantine thing, as you should, check out some of the works of William Trevor. That's what Kier's reading as we speak. So that's so great to hear that, you're managing the situation, as best as can. And in fact, maximizing things like getting caught up on some reading.
Absolutely. And seeing some, we have, of course, they don't have this in the UK that I know of, but we watch a lot of, the channel that shows all the historical movies going way back, including, I suddenly can't think of the name of the channel.
Turner Classic
Movies.
Yes.
Turner Classic. We watch that a lot. And as a matter of fact, there's a great film being shown tonight, which was an extraordinary film called The Group. It was a Sidney Lumet film.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film. And we've been watching a lot of, we saw Alan Alda in a wonderful Alan Alda in a wonderful film recently. The Heart is the Lonely Hunter.
Oh yes, gosh, I haven't seen that since I was in college, but I do.
It's a brilliant film. It's wonderful. He's playing a deaf and dumb person. He has no lines, but my God, what an acting job he's done.
I'm making a note to watch that tonight. I do recall really enjoying it. I don't know why I haven't got back to see it all these years, but yeah, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic movie. And Turner Classic Movies is a great channel. And what they've done for, decades now, is really treat the film they're about to present the home viewer with a reverence, and it's introduced, and they have a lot of anecdotal information, none of which is inserted while you're enjoying the film. But I can't recall the name of the host now. There was
Mankiewicz.
Yes. Thank you. And there was a gentleman
his father was a famous producer. He introduces the film. Sometimes they have guest introducers, but he does most of them, and he gives you some very interesting information before you watch the film, and then he comes on at the end of the film to kind of finish it off. He's great.
Oh, great! And that will be Joseph L. Mankiewicz's son, will it? Joseph Mankiewicz was the old Hollywood producer, wasn't he? Yeah, he did a lot of things.
They also have a live film festival. Once a year, there's in Hollywood, there's a theater they take over once a year in which they salute certain films by having a live presentation with an audience that you can go to. And as a matter of fact, they did one of my films not too long ago called David and Lisa. And so I went out there for it. But they're a wonderful organization.
Oh, well, two things. Firstly, I absolutely adore David and Lisa. Every nuanced cadence of that film is just sublime. And I mean that from the heart. It's a special film to me. And
thank you.
I just can't say enough about how remarkable you and Janet Margolin are together. The chemistry and the acting is just so organic.
And also a favorite actor of mine that I was so pleased to work with. That was Howard De Silva, who plays the psychiatrist.
Yes.
In the film. And, he had a brilliant Hollywood career, and then he was blacklisted during the McCarthy era. But he had a wonderful career. As a matter of fact, he had a great Broadway career. He must have done 30 Broadway shows. He was in the original Broadway production of Oklahoma, playing, the song "Poor Judd is Dead." He played Judd.
Oh my gosh!
He's an extraordinary actor. And David and Lisa, which was made by Frank Perry, the director, it was Frank Perry's first film, and he couldn't have cared less about his politics. He just wanted the right actor. So he was responsible for Howard De Silva's second film acting career. Completely.
That's amazing. He helped him.
Remember, he played Benjamin Franklin in 1776, and he had a wonderful career afterwards. And David and Lisa was completely responsible for my film career, 100%. I had one feature film before called The Hoodlum Priest, directed by Irvin Kershner, which was a good film, but it didn't do that much for my acting career until David and Lisa came along.
Stephen, is that, I've got a lot of threads in my head right now. Is that the same Irvin Kershner who directed Empire Strikes Back? And
yes.
Yeah.
So that was almost 20 years later, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
He did a number of good films. I can't think of them offhand, but if you look him up, you'll recognize the films that did very well. And he worked with some kind of high-powered people later. The Hoodlum Priest was his first feature film. He'd done other films before that.
I think he did The Eyes of Laura Mars, didn't he? Was that one of his?
Oh, yeah. I remember that one. That in the early days of cable television, back in the early 1980s, that one was played a lot. That's a great film. I think Irvin Kershner was, according to George Lucas, he was one of his professors at, was it UCLA? I think that...
yes, you're right.
Yeah.
And also, oh gosh, do you remember a Kazan film about this young man who is in Greece and he gets to come to America? Ilya Kazan directed it. Oh gosh.
Um,
Oh
it's
gosh. I
kind
can't
of
think of the name of. Can't think of the name of it. The name of the young. It was named Stathis Yayelis. He was a Greek actor that.
America.
America.
right.
That's it, from
That's right.
1963.
Well,
Yes.
if you look that up, the cinematographer of that film
Haskell Wexler.
Haskell Wexler. Well, Haskell Wexler. Well done. Haskell Wexler was the cinematographer on my first film, Hoodlum Priest,
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
the Kirshner film. Yeah.
There's just another connection yet still. Wow. And I noticed some others while I was, getting ready over the past couple days to chat with you again, and we'll get to them. But real quick, I want to go back to Turner Classic Movies, because I could not remember the name of the host who ran the show for many years, and his name was Robert Osborne.
That's correct. Yes.
Do you remember
Robert
him?
Osborne. Yes, and I was interviewed by him for something, and I can't remember what it could have been for 2001, but I can't remember. But I also, I encountered him socially. He was a lovely man, a truly lovely, warm individual, and was sorry to lose him.
Yeah, that was only a few years ago. I think he passed in 2017.
Maybe 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how long. Yeah.
And he had a very warm screen presence. You just knew when
Yes, he did.
when you were about to sit down with Robert Osborne introducing a film, you were going to have a great time.
Well, that's what he was like in person, even just privately. He was the same way.
That's wonderful. He received a Peabody Award, I think, towards the end of his career too, rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. Absolutely.
Well, if it's okay, I want to ask you about David and Lisa, since you brought it up.
Sure.
And although, as I've said, that the performances were heralded and are still, at the time, it was deemed a bit controversial by some, since it touched upon, again at the time, a socially taboo subject of clinical mental health care, particularly in young people. So my question is, how were you drawn to the project, and what excited you about wanting to work on it?
Well, I had worked. Frank Perry had a half-hour program on public television at the time before he did David and Lisa. He kind of produced it. I don't think he directed any of them, but it was called Playwright at Work. It was on Channel 13 in New York, and which was the public television channel at the time. And I think the pilot for that series was written by his wife, who wrote the screenplay, Eleanor Perry, who wrote the screenplay for David and Lisa, and it was a play that she had written. And the point of the program was that a climactic scene from a work in progress would be acted, and then the other 15 minutes, would be an interview with the playwright.
Okay.
And so I did the pilot, and I did another Coppett, the playwright, Arthur Coppett. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He did Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's hung you in the closet, and I'm feeling so sad. That was Arthur Coppett. And I remember he appeared on this program, and I was also in the acting section, the 15-minute acting section. So I knew nothing about David and Lisa when it was first being cast. Hadn't been approached, but they cast a young actor who I can't remember his name, but he would be familiar to you if I could remember. This is an 83-year-old mind isn't working quite as well as it used to. But anyway, he was cast in this film, which was, David and Lisa, the budget was $180,000. And it was, that money was raised not by having a distribution, but he raised it the way you raise money to produce a play. They had people just, here, I'll invest 20,000 or I'll invest 1,000, whatever. And that's how he got the money to make the film.
Gosh.
So this young actor, just before he was supposed to begin, a number of weeks before he was supposed to begin, he got a Hollywood film. And he said, "Sorry, folks, but I got to take this job." So they were suddenly without a David. So they began to see everybody in New York for this role. And that's when my agent heard that they were willing to see me. They knew me from that. They had liked my work, but they thought I was possibly too old for the part. I always looked very young for my age in those days. Because when I made David and Lisa, I was supposed to be playing a high school age kid.
Right.
But I was actually, I was about 26 when I did David and Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw me in their apartment. They just had a 16 millimeter camera in their apartment, and anybody they were interviewing, you give your name, rank, and serial number, and they'd ask you a few questions, and that was it. And I remember walking I had just gotten a haircut, a kind of close haircut. And whenever it kind of makes you look even younger. Yes, of course. And I remember walking into it was Eleanor Perry, was married to Frank Perry. Eleanor greeting me at the doorway. And she's, "Oh, Kier, if you were only 5 years young."
Oh, no.
She stopped. Just, "Oh, my God, you look so much younger." So they had me come in and stand in front of the 16 millimeter camera. And it really was name, rank, and serial number. What's your name? How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. And that was it. And I got an offer from my agent the next day. Wow. And that was it. That's how it happened. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It was a tiny cast, all done on location in suburban Philadelphia on the main line. Right next, I can't remember the name of the town. It was right next to Haverford, Pennsylvania. Anyway, and Frank Perry, he was a wonderful director. It was just such an very intimate experience. And it was a perfect experience, as a matter of fact.
Well, dare I say it is something, and I don't say this often nor lightly, but it is a perfect film. I mean that. Everything you say about the experience you had working on the set, that intimacy and the small cast. I can imagine there would have been a rather small crew as well. It all parlays into, a seamless and almost ethereal, viewing experience. The location shots, the camera movement, the fluidity of all of these synergies working together, along with, of course, you're acting with, Janet Margolin, and it moves from interiors to exteriors in a way that never feels disjunctive.
Oh, thank you.
And nor does it feel that it's what's the word I would use? Kind of like a bear with me, Kier. I'm sorry. This is my noisy Montclair neighborhood. No, I had a car alarm going on outside. There are some people still about. There's still a couple of shops open on this block. The word I was searching for was voyeuristic. It does not feel in any way that it's a voyeuristic viewing experience. one of the
Given
additional
the subject matter.
Exactly, because it was then and is still a sensitive topic, and thankfully, now in 2020, society is, hope to say, much more adept at being able to address things like the need for clinical mental health care, especially in younger people. But it really does bring you into the world of David and Lisa, and the doctor who cares for you so much, and all of the extra characters, your friends in the school. There's no wasted movement. There's no wasted dialogue. Everybody belongs in that world.
You might be interested to know that one of the minor roles of there are a few other students that had some scenes with us, like they were in the dining room. There's the table when I first enter the school, and I have my first meal, and I'm surrounded by several students. And one of the female actors,
Mm-hmm.
Was Karen Gorney, who played the female lead in Saturday Night Fever.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, opposite,
John Travolta.
Yes, opposite John Travolta.
I had not made that connection. Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, that was a hugely successful picture.
Yeah.
But, and I assume that's when you met Karen, that was the first time you'd worked together?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And
did you stay in touch?
She wasn't. No, as a matter of fact, I hadn't seen her since until about 3 years ago. I was in a play. It was a revival of a play, Tennessee Williams play. Anyway, and she was, and my wife and I. My wife is a Tony-nominated actress and we did this play together. We worked a lot together, my wife and I, and in the last 20 years. And this is a revival off Broadway, and she was in it. Hadn't seen her since David and Lisa.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, time and good fate was meant to bring you two together again in some way.
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned the fact that you looked, and you still do look very young for your age, if I may say, and I mean that, the fact that you went from playing a high school age young man, a boy, in 1962 in David and Lisa, and of course you made The Thin Red Line in 1964, but in 1960...
Actually, it was filmed in 63. So
63.
It was the very next year.
Right,
yeah.
Sorry. Released in 64. Right. But I was merely going to say how remarkable it is that come 1965, with the release of Bunny Lake is Missing, here you are, playing the brother, and your performance comes across as though you are certainly not a teenager, but, very much a young professional man, who's already making his claim to the world of journalism, staking his claim, as it were. And that's another testament to your gifts as an actor, I think, because if you watch the two films back to back, on one hand, you could say, oh, it's clearly the same person. He's only a few years apart. But the way you portray the two different characters belies the small difference in the time frame between those two movies.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was closer to my actual age in those things, and maybe my hair grew a little longer, so I looked my own age. I don't know. I've forgotten. But that was not the happiest. I mean, the high point of that film was getting to work with Laurence Olivier, which was was a very important time in my life to have gotten to work with that genius and lovely man. I loved working with him. He was wonderful, which made the whole thing worthwhile, given the fact that it was the most horrendous experience in terms of working with a director, because Otto Preminger was not a pleasure to work with. I mean, I don't know whether you know, but he's famous for being very difficult to work with.
Oh yes, yeah, we know.
And it was not a fun experience. And Olivier was one of and I enjoyed working with Carol Lindley, but she was getting some of the same flack that I was. And of course, he never treated Olivier that way. Believe me,
I'm sure.
It was. But in fact, that was another reason to look forward to working with on those scenes where he would be in. There wouldn't be that kind of flack,
right?
Not to the same extent, anyway. But
well, he had to, give Olivier the respect he'd already earned at that point in his career.
Yes.
Even
and,
Otto Preminger.
He would have Otto Preminger would have treated John Wayne with kindness. I mean,
right.
It was a ranking system. If you were young enough, the young people that he worked with, he got most of the flack. He was a screamer. Well, not only did he scream at people, but which were almost worse, that in front of he'd be in front of a whole crew. His biting sarcasm was almost worse than being screamed at. He was not and he made some good films. I'm not knocking his talent. There's some wonderful films that he made, but it wasn't wonderful working with him.
Yeah, I believe there are plenty of stories out there about him being notorious on the set. I think John Frankenheimer was also the kind to, carry a bullhorn around and bark at people. Yeah, not a pleasant director, but, he was, of course, established at that point when you'd made Bunny Lake is Missing. I want to ask you about working alongside Carol Lindley and a bit more about Laurence Olivier, because for you as a young actor, that must have been the opportunity to mine a treasure trove, if you will, of things from his craft. Do you have any particular fond memories?
Well, I had been a fan of his since high school. I saw his early, not all his real. I didn't see his works from the 30s, but I certainly saw him play Hamlet, the film in which he played Hamlet, and he was brilliant. And so to get to work with this man, who I'd seen in other things too, was just watching how he worked, and he was so kind to me. He actually. He was very sensitive to the fact that I was suffering working with Otto Preminger. And he would, on his own time, away from the set, go over the lines with me over and over and over again, because I never studied lines so hard in my life, much harder than you normally do on a film, because it's not like memorizing a play. You memorize the day's work a few days ahead of time. But he would go over the lines, knowing that I had a tendency to be so tense that I kept going up in my lines.
Right.
Not because I hadn't learned them. It's just because I was so stressed out. So he was loved. In fact, he was overheard privately. Some crew member heard him went over to Preminger side, and somebody overheard him say, "Otto, dear boy, I really wish you wouldn't scream at the children." I was Premiger's response, "I'm too old to change. Anyway, but no, it was lovely working with. It was such a high point working with. And when you think about it, I was about to say that my very next film was 2001 after, but it wasn't actually. There was another film in between. But let's see, I filmed that Bunny Lake is Missing was the spring of 1965, and I arrived at the end of that year in London to begin filming 2001. So it was only like 8 months later that I worked with Stanley. And so going from Preminger to Stanley, I was about to accept, I remember there was another film in between, but it was going like from hell to heaven.
I mean, that's to be expected in the sense that, well, I'm assuming you would have been familiar at that point with Dr. Strangelove, Lolita, and
I was when I was in drama school. It was a school called the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York. There's Sanford Meisner. I don't know if you've heard of the Meisner
yes, of
technique,
course,
but Meisner,
yes, absolutely.
He was our acting teacher. It was my acting teacher, and Martha Graham was our dance teacher. It was a great school. But I remember having an afternoon off there. The school was on 54th Street, just between First and Second Avenues, and a few of my fellow students started raving about this war picture down the street with Kirk Douglas.
Yes.
So I had the afternoon off, so I went down there, and it was Paths of Glory.
Of course.
And my God, I mean, my jaw dropped to my waist when when the film was over. I had to go out and look at the poster and say, who directed this thing?
Right.
Because I thought it was one of the most extraordinary films I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And little did I know that I'd end up working with this genius.
Not even a decade later from...
No, yeah.
That's just incredible.
And I saw everything after. I saw the film that he did before that with Sterling Hayden about
Dr.
the robbery.
Strangelove. The Killing, of course. The Killing. Yes,
So I
yes.
saw The Killing, I saw Lolita, I saw Dr. Strangelove, and everything afterwards. But, when I arrived, I think Stanley's only problem with me was kind of to get me over my sense of awe. I mean, I was in such awe of working with him.
Yeah.
And I remember, I always felt that we first started working together, I felt maybe I'm a little stiff just because I can't forget that I'm working with this genius. and he just took me aside one day, shortly after we began, very shortly after we began. And he just said, Kier, I just want you to know that you're one of the finest actors I've had the pleasure to work with.
Wow.
I just want you to know that. I just love your work. I just want you to know that you're okay.
Oh, my gosh.
And, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was approximately that's what he said. And then I was fine from there on in.
Right. Well, because that's all it takes, to receive the, private praise of someone whom you already admired.
First of all, he never raised his voice. He was never sarcastic. You just knew you were dealing with this highly intelligent guy. And he was open to ideas. Didn't necessarily mean he'd use them, but you never felt shy about suggesting something.
Right.
In fact, I only have one suggestion he actually ended up using, which was a very minor thing from my point of view, very, very minor. But
please tell us.
It was the scene at the end of the film when I'm in that strange room and I begin to age. First appearing in a spacesuit, and then I'm an older man in a blue bathrobe eating at a table. And up till then, I had two versions of the aging. One was just looking like I normally did in the spacesuit. And there was an older version where through the visor of the spacesuit, you could see this face was beginning to age. And each time the younger version became aware of the older version, Stanley would cut to the older version and never would cut back to the younger version. But you'd see the younger version reacting in some way to make you want to see what is he reacting to, and then Stanley would cut to the older version. So the older version with the wrinkled face inside the spacesuit reacts to something, and then you cut to the figure older yet eating at the table. And then the oldest version, which is, me looking like 200 years old on the bed, reaching up to the monolith. So you have the younger version at the table eating, reacting. And instead of just a look, which I had been doing up till then, I said, Stanley, do you mind if how about I knock something off the table? and I have to reach down for it just to give it a variety of a way of reacting. And just as I'm reaching, I become aware of something. And then I look over to see the oldest version. So that was all. It was that's the minor suggestion.
Kier, that is no minor suggestion, my friend. That's an epical moment.
Well, a lot of people read a lot into that moment, but my motivation for it was to find a different way of reacting.
Right. In the moment, acting is reacting, of course, as they say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm just going to say again, I don't think that's a small contribution at all. It's a very, very unique and abrupt moment in a film that is largely quiet, and particularly during that scene, which is especially quiet. Just the sound of the breaking glass, as I'm sure you've, attended many screenings. I've seen 2001 on the big screen. I don't know how many times now, but if the theater has a great sound system, that moment when the glass hits the floor just before you turn to react, it's jarring, but effectively jarring.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I believe that on a Twitter forum with the hashtag #AskBowman, you said at some point recently that walking on the sets of 2001 made Disneyland look sad. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And especially the centrifuge, which is almost 3 stories high. It was in the largest studio of the complex, and just about missed the lights that were up there, by a few feet. Mm-hmm. And it was actually built not by set builders. That wheel was built by Vickers Aircraft, and it was the equivalent of a Ferris wheel,
right? But
enclosed with a set inside, and it could revolve at 3 miles an hour. And as a matter of fact, there's the scene where, if you remember, I think it's the first scene where you see me in that centrifuge. Gary Lockwood is eating at a table, and I enter the scene at the hub of the wheel with a ladder coming down, and I come down the ladder and I go over to this place to get some food, some hot food, and then I seemingly walk upside down to Gary Lockwood and slide next to him, because that take was it's all one take. It's one shot.
Yep.
And how they did that was that he pans me coming down that ladder, and then I again getting the food, and then seemingly walking upside down. But I don't walk upside down. I just stand in place, and they revolve Gary Lockwood down to me.
Right.
Which is how that was done.
It's extraordinary. And I mean, whenever I find myself having to explain to people much younger than myself, who have only known the filmmaking world that includes computer-generated imagery or CGI, it's impossible for them to grasp, in one sentence. You can't just say, you do understand that this film was made before CGI. It takes further explanation because they're incredulous. And then if I get the chance to explain, no, this is how Stanley and his team did this. This is how that shot was created. Their jaw, drops, and, it's like they swallow three flies.
I don't remember. I may have told you how they got the shot, which was the only kind of scary stunt that I had to do myself, which was the shot, the scene where when Hal won't let me back in, I have to go through the emergency
Right.
Entrance and be blown into this airless hatchway.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they couldn't use a stuntman is because in my hurry to try to save Gary Lockwood, or try to get him anyway, who's been killed by Hal, by disconnecting him, I have left my helmet back behind. So I have to be. It had to be my face.
So Stanley needed your face.
That airlock.
Yeah, clearly.
It was blown into the airlock. And how that was done was they had a circus Rouse that they had hired for this stunt, and he measured the drop, and which was as I say, it was 2 or 3 stories drop, because the camera was on the floor, looking up.
Of course,
because it was built not looking side. The film it looks like I'm blown
horizontally. Yeah, right.
Horizontally, but actually it was done with me. It was done vertically.
It's a vertical shot, and you're on top. Yeah.
He measured the drop, and then twice measured more rope, which was attached to a wire, which was attached to the rear of my spacesuit. And so I'm those 2 stories up, just to the side of that hatchway that I'm going to be blown through, but out of sight on a parallel platform to that hatchway. And the rope is in the hands of this circus roustabout with huge, heavy gloves. He has tied a huge knot at the end of the first length of rope that represents the drop I'm going to have to do.
Right.
And then he's repeated that. So on action, I dive headfirst toward the camera, dropping free fall.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, the circus roustabout that rope is just spinning through his hands. He's waiting for the first knot.
Right.
When the first knot reaches his gloves, he jumps off his platform, and I go hurtling back to the ceiling again.
Incredible.
And then when his feet hit the ground, he lets go again, and waiting for the second knot, and I go hurtling back toward the camera. So that's how you got the shot, the experience of seemingly watching me bounce around in that confined space
with zero gravity. I mean, it doesn't
gravity.
It doesn't get better looking than that. There's no CGI that can replicate that authenticity of in camera practical effects, and the ingenuity that Stanley and his team must have had to come up with on a daily, even hourly basis. Well, how do we accomplish this? And in that scene, which you just described, the making of, there's no more just brilliant example of how effective that is to this day.
You might, I don't know if I mentioned it, but you might mention your audience that's going to hear this interview. If anyone's interested in such detailed description of the making of 2001, right from the beginning of the first concept that Stanley had when he read a short story by Arthur C. Clarke that was published about 1950, around then, in a science fiction magazine called The Sentinel.
That was the
germ of the idea that became 2001. And it was a short story. But the best thing that I have ever seen is about the making. The best thing I've ever read, not seen. The best thing I've ever read about 2001 is a book that came out. I think it was first published in 2018, and it's called Space Odyssey, and it's by Michael Benson. It's the best thing I've ever read about. I mean, he's got things that I learned more stuff that I didn't know about the film from reading his book. Truly, I'm serious.
I believe you.
You've seen the book, obviously.
Oh, I've read it twice. It's everything you say, and just a captivating read after reading everything from Jerome Agel's book, the first paperback that was published in the early 70s, all the way through to Piers Bizzoni's work, that fantastic book that he did with Taschen Publishing that looks like a monolith.
Yes,
and
right.
and so many others, that it's true that Michael's book is, above the fray of so much, I should say, that's been written, and that's not to impugn anyone who's written. There have been some fantastic writing, to say the least. One of the things that drew me to Stanley as a teenager in the 1980s was after I had seen The Shining on a home TV screen for the first time. I was hypnotized by that film, and I was allowed to see it at a pretty young age. I think in 1982, it was showing on a local UHF station out of Long Island, and I'm sure they didn't secure the legal rights to show it, but it was shown, and my friends and I were just very drawn into it. I had seen it by the time I was maybe 12 years old. That would have been 1982 or 1983 at the latest. And so fast forward a couple years, and, I'm in junior high and then high school. And I remember going to the library and saying, show me all of your books on Stanley Kubrick. And they said, who? Oh, well, there's the card. There's the card catalog, and I was able to find some articles, but at the time, there weren't too many things written about his films that you could find in a library, other than predominantly 2001, a few articles about Dr. Strangelove, and some covering Barry Lyndon. And that I was able to fast forward through all this time in my own life to when Michael Benson's book came out, and having read so much about it, I couldn't agree with you more that it really is the 2001 making of par excellence.
Yeah.
Have you met him? Have you had the chance?
Yes, I have. We were we were at an event. I think it could have been. Trying to remember, it might have been an event at the American Film Institute. A screening there. I can't remember exactly. But yes, I've met him, since the book came out. And hold on 1 second. Maya, when did we meet Michael Benson? Was it at the American Film Institute, or was it somewhere else? Do you remember? Yeah, I can't remember, but I did meet him at a 2001 event. It wasn't a Comic-Con type event. It was some screening of 2001, I think.
The Museum of the Moving Image.
Hold on. Yeah?
It was at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens.
Oh, in Astoria, Queens.
It was the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens. That's where I met him.
That's actually where I met Michael Benson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of our show's contributors who can't be with us today, our friend Mark Lentz and I have been to Museum of the Moving Image, or MoMI, as they call it, and for several Kubrick events. And of course, you and I bumped into each other this past January of 2020, I believe, on the 16th or the 17th, and Katharina was there, and that was the second time we've gotten to chat a bit in person. But yeah, it was there that I met Michael Benson, and he did say he'd be happy to come on the show. So we're going to speak to him at some point, hopefully soon.
Good.
Great. One thing I want to mention to you, that it occurred to me after I was looking at Museum of the Moving Images posts on social media. I had known that their name had been turned it with the acronym of M, capital M, lowercase o, capital M, capital I. So they had shared a post about the new Kubrick exhibition that just went up there, which you and I were both there for the premiere of, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Extraordinary,
It really is extraordinary. They had a post about it, and in the comments section, I had simply written capital M, lowercase o, capital M, capital I. MMI are the Roman numerals for 2001.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'll be damned. What a thing. What a coincidence.
And it was, received well. They gave it a reaction, and someone from the museum, whoever's in charge of handling their social media, had written back to my comment. And I just thought it was funny because I was thinking, well, gosh, it just only occurred to me by happenstance, but these folks are working there, and they're doing a brand new, brilliant Kubrick exhibition. I can't believe no one else ever picked up on that.
Well, I think it's brilliant that you did. I mean, look, I've never thought about it. You did. So.
Oh, you're kind. You're too kind. Well, that theater, where you and Katharina and Dan Richter, who was, I believe, the second guest we had on our show back in 2018, he, and the whole panel, that was shot, I shot the video of your, Q&A discussion. And that theater is called the Sumner Redstone Theater. And as I understand it, it was designed in no small measure out of inspiration from 2001.
I don't think I knew that.
Do you recall the interior? Because it has a very interesting, almost like the sarcophagus or the fuselage interior of a spacecraft with incredible triangle foam padding, which contributes to what I felt was the greatest sound system I had ever experienced in a movie theater.
Yeah. I think the best sound in recent times for 2001 was there's a very well-known film director who's very responsible for the most recent
Christopher Nolan.
His version, the version of 2001 that he's very responsible for has the best sound I've heard for the film.
They were calling that the unrestored print, and yeah, I did see that twice at MoMI.
Yeah,
and the sound system, just for a quick example, is, you're so right, so remarkable that there's a scene when Dr. Floyd is meeting his liaison on Space Station 5, and you hear an announcement coming over a public address system, and it simply says, "A lady's blue scarf has been found at, please claim it at the reception." And it stands apart from the rest of the sound track, the audio track, so remarkably that when I experienced that for the first time, I actually turned to my friend and said, is that a house announcement? Did they just interrupt the film?
I have to tell you that I had never heard that at all. And then, oh gosh, 5 or 10 years ago, 10 years ago, approximately, at some screening of 2001 that my wife was with me, she heard that. Nobody has ever pointed it out to me. Nobody had pointed it out to anybody I ever met. She noticed it and realized that was because Kubrick put that in when he realized in editing the film that the continuity lady had goofed. And in the scene when the Russian scientists are trying to get some information from Dr. Floyd in that hallway when they kind of sit together, and that one of two of the women, there's a well-known British actor who plays the Russian one of the Russian scientists. The other three are women.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the women that has no lines had a blue sweater over the back of her chair. But when you came around, he did a reverse on that scene. There's no blue sweater. And so that's why Stanley put that little announcement in, just to cover the fact if anybody had questioned what happened to the blue sweater. I mean, nobody. It would take somebody who was really into film and understanding how film worked to have even noticed that there was no blue sweater in that, because it's a background character. But anyway, that's an example of Stanley's brilliance and his eye for detail. I mean, I had seen it by that time many times, and I never noticed the blue sweater not being there, let alone having ever heard that kind of that background public address system.
I got time for breakfast?
Oh, I think we can manage that.
How long have I got?
Your flight leaves in an hour and 10 minutes. As a matter of fact, I've reserved a table for you in the flight room.
Oh, fine, thanks.
It's been about 7 or 8 months since you were here last, wasn't it?
Well, let's see, last June? Yeah, about 8 months.
I suppose you saw the work on the new section when you came in.
Hey, coming along great, huh?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, wait a minute. I gotta make a couple of phone calls. You go on ahead in the restaurant. I'll meet you there.
Right.
Okay, so this concludes part 1 of our discussion, but you can bet we've got more in store, so stay tuned. Thanks to Mark Lentz, James Marinaccio, and the best producer a Kubrick file could ever hope to have, Stephen Rigg. Be sure to subscribe and like our show wherever you grab your casts, because, seriously, if you don't, Stephen might just go do a podcast about canine hygiene. Okay? Also, be sure to join the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society on Facebook, the greatest resource of SK info on the interwebs. Meanwhile, stay strong and hang in there, because we are going to ride this thing out, friends. The people who bring you this show have all lost loved ones. A lifelong family friend, Orlando Staton, whom I bought my first drum kit from when I was 12, succumbed to it recently. And not 10 minutes after we spoke with Keir Dullea, I found out my general practitioner of many years, Dr. Mike Giuliano, had died from the coronavirus. Lily and Evie Rigg lost their granddad, Michael, a lovely human being and a wonderful granddad. So we get it. This is hitting and hurting every one of us in unique but also unifying ways. You know, I actually work full-time in a grocery store, guys. That's the truth. And tomorrow, I'll be back there just trying to help people bring food to their families. Believe me, we not only know the cost, we feel it too. So, this road is long, but be strong and keep well, because we need you to join us here again soon in Kubrick's universe. We're going to lead you out with a song featured in Bunny Lake is Missing by one of our favorite bands, The Zombies. Take good care, and thank you all for listening.
Come on time for the show. The clock will tell you when to go. While the show's on, can you get in? No! Come on time! Otto Preminger presents Bunny Lake is Missing. What suspense! Laurence Olivier is immense. Come on time! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! The zombies are there. That's us. That's me. That's him. That's he. We wanna go on record and saying,
how great can a movie be?
Carol Lindley is keen as a knife. Keir Dullea will give you the time of your life. Come with your girlfriend, or come with your wife, but come on time! Please come on time.
It's Kubrick's universe. We just live in it.
We have taken very thorough precautions in this podcast against broadcasting anything which might only be attributed to human error.
Thank you for listening to the Stanley Kubrick podcast. Come back soon.
This show comes to you from the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society.